But it was right around this time that I learned about another blissful hiker, maybe the first blissful hiker, Beethoven. I mean, he doesn't look very blissful here, does he? He's got to have that serious expression. But Beethoven loved walking. He needed to walk. He tells us how happy I am to be able to wander among trees and shrubs, over rocks and under trees. I think I have that right. Bushes and herbs. That's kind of different things. Under trees and over rocks. No one can love nature as I love it. I love that Beethoven said that, you know. It's so possessive. Have you ever felt that way before? Like when you've been out in a beautiful place, you're communing with nature. You have this intimate conversation with it. No one else is involved. It's just you. That's how Beethoven felt. Beethoven had an interesting schedule. He was a morning person, so he would get up early and do all of his work, his composition, in the morning. I mean, how many of us are morning people? I'm a morning person. That's when I think the best. Got up early in the day. But he couldn't just like sit there at the piano and work. He writes this down too, that every so often he would have to stand up and, in his words, run out into the open. Oh, it's kind of a weird expression, isn't it? I mean, he's just kind of getting exercise, getting fresh air. He needed to run out into the open. And when he went out into the open, this is when he would take a notebook with him, just in case something came to him, just in case he got an idea, some creative thought. Later, after lunch, he would take a longer walk, what he called a promenade. And because it was longer, he took a larger notebook with him to catch the ideas. Now, I was so drawn to this story about Beethoven because Beethoven was exactly the same age as I was when he suffered his devastating loss. And like me, he was at the height of his performing career as a professional pianist when he lost his hearing. And, like I was, absolutely devastated by it, crushed. And we know this because Beethoven wrote about it. He wrote a letter to his brothers, Karl and Johann, and it's filled with despair about what was happening to him. He just lays it all out there. He even, in this letter, contemplates killing himself. But the interesting thing is, he never sent the letter. I don't know if any of you have experienced this before. You know, you have like a relationship that's a little bit tough, or something has happened, and people say, write a letter and don't send it. Do you know what I'm talking about? Just the act of putting it down on paper, he got it out of his system, this is what we're assuming, and didn't send that letter. Something changed in him. He didn't kill himself. He went on living, stepping into probably what must have been a very dark and unknowable future. He, maybe we could say, hiked towards his bliss and went on to write some of the most astonishing music ever created. There is a connection between walking and wellness. I like to think of Beethoven as using those footsteps to get him back to a sense of being well, a sense of being grounded. There's no way that he could really know what the science is. He had an intuition about the fact that his body needed to move, but also his brain needed that change of scenery from the studio out into the open, longer walks that he took into the afternoon, and certainly ones that he would take in the Vienna woods, in the countryside, which he loved so much. And scientists tell us that there's a very specific connection between walking and creativity. They call it impact-related retrograde. So it's when the backward flowing blood through the arteries syncs with the heart rate and the stride rate to dynamically control what goes to the brain, the blood that's going into the brain, the circulation. You literally massage your thoughts when you're moving. And so this is exactly what he was after. And Beethoven used his walking to write one of his greatest symphonies, his Sixth Symphony. You know, and I should just mention something here, just a short note. If you want to take any pictures anytime of any of my slides, I just saw someone pull out your camera, help yourself. If you take a picture of me, please feel free to post it at #blissfulhiker, please tag me. But just make sure I look beautiful, okay? Gotta have an agreement here. So Beethoven used his walking for one of his most important works, his Sixth Symphony. I can't say that, I couldn't say that on the radio either, so I would say Symphony number 6. Symphony number 6, which has sounds of nature in it. It's quite unusual that way. It has bird sounds, thunder, the sound of water, a brook that's babbling. And Beethoven wasn't sure what he was going to call this symphony. He wanted to name it something. First he thought characteristic symphony. And then he had a longer title, Recollections of Country Life. It sounded kind of a little bit too much. Finally settled on what we know it as the Pastoral Symphony. And you can see all the scratching at the bottom. He wrote in his scores. This is a facsimile, of course, of the original score, a picture of the original score. He wrote things in there. And what he tells us, which I love, is instead of saying it's the Pastoral Symphony, you're about to walk out and you're going to see the bird and then you cuckoo and then this is the story. He says, no, I'm not going to give you the story, but not only that, I want you to decide how you want to feel. Just kind of a modern thought. I mean, in a sense, he backed off from giving you a script. But he tells you, I'm going to back off from giving you a script. He's inviting you to come along on this journey. And what happened to me is I was healing from my loss, healing from my sorrow, and saying, forget it, I'm never listening to classical music again. It's over. Our relationship has, been severed. I couldn't get music, of course, out of my memory. And I don't take headphones with me when I hike, but the music is in my ears. And Beethoven's Pastoral Symphony, especially the beginning, came with me on that first hike in New Zealand. And it's a really interesting way you start. If you start from the north, if you've ever seen a map of New Zealand, it's a long, thin sandbar that goes to the top. And you hike 90 miles on this. So it's 4 days of hiking basically on a beach. It's quite remote. You feel like you've come to the other side of the world, which yes, you have come to the other side of the world. And when you start, there's a lot of cliffs with the oceans, in a cauldron of waves underneath. The Pacific Ocean and the Tasman Sea meeting in this sort of spiritual connection of a meeting of waters. And as I arrived there, as you can imagine, I'm about to start my hike. I'm excited. I have all that energy and enthusiasm, but I also have fear and trepidation because these first steps are ones of 2,000 miles ahead of me. And then there's also impatience, like let's get going. It's all of these feelings. And Beethoven was right there. It's that opening of the curtain. It's that moment right before something's about to happen. And he emphasizes it right at the beginning. So if you can read music at all, that's just like 3 bars. There's a little tune, 3 measures, and then it goes to a fermata. So he's like, hey, guess what? You want to come with me? And then he holds it. And he says, all right, let's go. It's brilliance. And his melody, and it sits there, and you could sit there forever if you want to, but you really have to resolve. It's a 5 chord. It's a breath in. And my feet were right in sync with Beethoven.